Welcome. Thank you for taking the time for participating today and joining our discussion with regards to the on-the-ground situation concerning textile waste, both on industrial level and post-consumer level. My name is Rakesh, and I have the pleasure of being the host and having with me a group of experts and passionate personnel who have invested their time, their sweat, and their blood looking at the topic of textile waste and what can be done to improve the situation so that more of that value remains in the hand of the producer. As we start off, I want to also say that thanks to all of you for participating from different parts of the world. So, ni hao, konnichiwa, xin chao, namaste, salam, hello, and ciao. Thank you for joining us and for taking time. What's also interesting to see is the interest that we have from almost every stakeholder in the supply chain, from the brands to the testing service providers, our peers, to tier 1 factories, tier 2 factories, industry associations, recyclers, NGOs, and consultants who hopefully will support the industry moving ahead. We asked you during registration on what are you experiencing, what are you witnessing about this topic of waste, textile related waste. And what you have indicated to us is that a quarter of the cases, this waste is being sold to waste producers and recyclers. You've also mentioned that there are situations where waste is being sold to aggregators who are then passing it forward. And we asked you, how are you managing the waste? How are you segregating it? You all mentioned to us that a lot of you are separating it as either cutting waste or fabric end roll, but also by raw material and by color and composition. This is on the industrial level, on post-industrial or pre-consumer level. Here are the variation depending on where you are based. So we see there's a slight difference in the case of Bangladesh and Pakistan, just as an example. And finally, we asked you during registration, what do you feel should be the area of focus? And you all mentioned, one quarter of you mentioned that the emphasis should be on post-consumer garments waste. So for that, we have accelerating circularity today. We also mentioned that equal emphasis and focus should be on post-industrial textile waste. So we also will hear stories about this, along with experiences from Cambodia and an ongoing research project. We will get to hear, first of all, from Recycle Raw, from Mr. Abdul Razak, who will share with us on the ground situation in terms of getting this post-industrial textile waste, in terms of recommendations on what should be changed or what they desire should be changed in order to have better quality, greater supply, and better stable prices. He's the MD with Recycle Raw based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. After which, we'll hear about this ambitious initiative of accelerating circularity, what they have achieved in America, what's the plan for Europe and Asia. And for that, we'll have Ms. Petra Schweiger. She leads the efforts for accelerating circularity in Europe, and she has rich experience based on her time in Asia. Finally, in terms of actual experiences, we'll also hear from Mr. Massimiliano Tropiano. He's based in Cambodia, and he will give us some insights on the projects that GIZ has undertaken in Cambodia with partners and why GIZ initiated a regional textile waste mapping on post-industrial textile waste. To sum it up, we'll talk about the next steps, and that is with regards to an ongoing research project that GIZ has funded of mapping this textile waste in the region to identify what's happening, why is it happening, and having some recommendations. And for that, we'll have Ms. Fatima Jahan, who is the project leader for this initiative. So let's look a little further ahead as to why are we talking about this today. So I think we all realize the power and the importance of the textile sector, in addition to the employment it generates and the economic aspects of it for countries, or the diversity that it provides. And of course, the happiness it provides to each one of us, where we wear a garment that is reflecting our mood or the occasion. It also has some other impacts. That is, with regards to its need for raw materials, its need for water, and its need for energy, which all also translates into emissions. At the same time, there are some facts or situation which is not so pleasant in terms of what happens to these textiles once we decide we no longer want them for whatever reasons. The focus for today will be on this topic of waste on production level and consumer level. But perhaps at the end of this webinar, we might reconsider if we should be calling it waste, or should we talk about it as potential secondary material? Should we talk about it as treasure? What name we should give it? That's left to you. So if you all have any question, if you all have any comments, please share this via the chat and Q&A. At the moment, of course, all of you are muted. So the best that we can do is you pass on your comments, your questions, give us your feedback so that our panelists can respond and share their perspective. Now, while we look at the simplified view of consumer, post-consumer, and post-industrial waste, if we were to look at a value chain, let's say of a monomaterial cotton, what we see is this. It is complex. What we will focus on today is a little bit about what happens at post-industrial level and post-consumer level to this waste, and how it can potentially go back, what can be done in order to make sure that the value of this is maximized in the hands of the one who generates it. And why do we talk of value? Because it is a lot of money. This is the data as of 2019. Yeah, so it is still pre-COVID. What you see, the top exporter of textile scraps in the world is Bangladesh, exporting 84.4 million. Yeah. What happens to the remaining waste? How much of it is being recycled? How much of it is being, let's say, incinerated? And how much of it is ending up into landfills? All of those are interesting aspects. And I think you as manufacturers, you as being on the ground, have a better visibility. So it will be useful to have your interaction and your comments. And while we are on the topic of money, let's talk about money then. So if we can have the first question, and if you all can provide your feedback via this quick poll question. Ryan, can we have the first poll question, please? So when we talk of recycled textile materials or these secondary materials, can you all please share your experience? Are you seeing that they are actually cheaper than virgin material, or do you feel that they are priced at an equal level to virgin material? Or do you feel they're actually more expensive, or just a little bit cheaper, or perhaps cheaper, but it has higher risks and costs because you need to validate and verify the quality and also the chemical compliance of this? So thank you to 30% of the participants who have already responded. If some of you could also respond, so we meet the 50% threshold and we get an idea on what you are experiencing. All right, so Ryan, maybe in about 3 seconds, we can have a look at the results. So if anybody else wants to, then please pitch in. All right. So what we see is your experience is that they are more expensive. So we'll hear a reflection from our panelists as to should they be more expensive, or are they experiencing some reasons which is making this so-called waste more expensive? All right, thank you for that. Then let's also look at the initiatives, international initiatives, which are focusing on this topic of textile waste and recycling. What you see here is an overview of initiatives focusing on different aspects, sustainability elements for the textile industry. And we see that there are at least 5 initiatives which also address the topic of textile waste and recycled content. So there's the SAC HIG FEM, the Fair Trade Standard, but we also see Blue Sign requirements and the UN Alliance. Now, at the same time, there are policy initiatives which are focusing especially on textiles. So on one hand, there's a revision of the Waste Framework Directive in EU. And at the same time, there's the much anticipated sustainable textile strategy, which is going to come out before end of March, which will also look at sustainability aspects for textiles. And while all of that is coming up, what is already taking place is for all the facilities which are going through a HIG FEM verifications, there are already questions in there wherein facilities are asked to report on whether they are diverting these discarded materials from landfills, incinerators, and whether they are upcycling and passing it back into the circular economy. And it doesn't end there. Yeah? We've seen that there's this continuous focus from academia and research on the topic of textile waste, both on post-industrial and post-consumer level. What you see at the bottom is a post from 5 days back, where another research organization is looking for a freelance researcher concerning post-industrial textile waste. And there are many more examples I'm sure that you have come across. But it doesn't stop at academia. There have been practical implementations and cases on how waste is being recycled. And we'll hear about one more practical case from Accelerating Circularity. So let's start off looking at what's happening on the ground. And it's best to hear from a practitioner. So for that, we'd like to request Razak, if you can please share with us and compress the many months of work that you have done within 10 or 12 minutes and share your experience.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rakesh, to give a chance to describe about ground worker support for textile waste recycling industry in Bangladesh. And this is Abdul Razak from Recycle Raw Limited in Bangladesh. Before moving through the slides, I want to give some information at a glance regarding the apparel industry and also Bangladesh apparel industry. It is around 2 trillion business around the world, and 150 billion garments are moving each year from one country to another. And also, if we see the manufacturing market share, China is holding still the biggest market, and it's around 30%, but it's reducing 1% each year due to the environment issue, and which business is moving to Bangladesh as well as Vietnam and also some other countries. And luckily, Bangladesh is still holding the second position, but market share is like 6.8% individually. But European countries combinedly is holding around 22.5%. And if we go regarding post-consumer waste, USA alone is producing 12 million metric ton annually. From there, we can assume that the whole world is producing a bigger quantity of post-consumer waste. So it's need better management. And also in Europe, only 3.7 kilograms per capita incineration is happening. And so this is also unfortunate. And regarding pre-consumer waste, if I wanna share something like the global pre-consumer waste recyclable waste, recyclable waste will be around 9 million metric ton annually. And Bangladesh itself is producing 0.6 million metric ton per year. And it's really unfortunate that still 1% textile waste is back into clothing supply chain loop. And it doesn't mean that the total quantity is going to incinerate it or landfill. But the most of the cases we found that they are going to the waste value is going to downwards. Like I would better say it's downcycled, not upcycled. And it is also estimated in Bangladesh that around 20% pre-consumer waste goes for incineration in terms of brick production as well as industrial boiler in our factories due to extremely lower value. If I would say regarding recycle raw, we always call it one-stop solution. What we do, we we collect materials from, we collect projection from different buyers, I mean our recyclers, and then we better get a very good feedback from them that how much quantity they record in a year. Then we plan our production team plan for material collection, that is scale up, and then we separate raw materials, I mean the waste materials, in different categories, like oven knit, denim, hard waste is completely separate, and then we separate according to composition. And some of the recyclers require dyes and chemicals wise, and also color wise, and some recycler also demand for size wise. It's really not too much easy task to separate this way. And finally, we go for filtration to remove any kind of hazardous materials or any dust. And then we go for inspection. In our internal inspection, we call it equal inspection. After that, we confirm for bill confirmation. And then we go for shipping to the recycler. And for the upcoming season, we are planning for add another one process, like fiber shading in our own process, so that it can add some more value. On the other hand, we also work with some organization, we call them our stakeholders from European countries, and also some brands itself, and also recyclers. They have a very good relationship with BGMEA, and also good relationship with brands, and on also factories. They give us a chance to work directly with factories. We collect pre-segregated waste from the factories directly, and then we confirm the total quality, like again maybe a little bit more filtration, and then scale up, baling and sorting, and then logistics support to them. And that's all about recycle raw activities. Some challenges we are facing as well. I think brands, on my experiences, I would say the brands are facing some challenges, like recycled yarns are expensive. Yeah, I would also say that recycled yarns are expensive presently, because on a normal sense, what the consumer thinks that recycled materials cost should be lower than the virgin materials. But in the practical cases, it's compared to the virgin materials, the prices is not that cheaper due to several issues. The main issues we are facing in the ground, that there is a lot of middlemen who are passing the ball towards the goal post, but they're not adding any value. So this is the big portion. You can see, like not just 1 or 2 middlemen, it can be like 5 to 6, even sometimes 10. So it's really expensive on that perspective. At the same time, not much recycle facilities. You know that Rakesh already told that Bangladesh is the biggest exporter in the world for recycled waste materials. Just because of we don't have any recycle facility, we don't have enough, I would say, enough recycle facilities in our country. So if we can establish the recycle facilities in our own countries, then the waste will not move away. There will be no transportation charge for transportation in twice. So it will be cheaper, I guess. For the recyclers' perspective, there is also challenges for scale up the materials, because one factory is not producing a lot of homogeneous materials at a single time. So scale up is a big issues. So Recycle Raw is working for scale up the materials in our own facility from different factories. And another point is lack of quality fulfilled stock. Actually, the middleman or any sorting company, first of all, they need to understand the quality of recyclers' requirement, and then they can able to feed stock. So some cases it's some communication gap, or middleman can, if any to meet a goal, like need a one-stop solution, I would say. And unstable raw materials prices is really true, because sometimes some buyers come to us to make a contract for whole year prices and whole year quantities. It's really difficult for us to quote a single price for whole year, because there is a lot of middlemen and they are like acting a buyer. So there is a lot of buyers, but waste is kind of fixed, so we cannot increase. It's a byproduct. So there is a unstable situation of prices. And on terms of recycled raw, yeah, we are also facing some challenges regarding informal business. First of all, I would say waste business is an informal business in Bangladesh, but we are still working to make it formalized with some of our stakeholders and organizations. They're giving us support from some European countries, and they're also working in government level to solve this problem. These really good things I saw. And biggest problem is fund crisis. Yeah, because the textile industry is much more popular to deal their business by LC, but in this sector we need to spread a lot of money and liquid money in the market, and even is as advanced. So it's difficult to grow up. But by the way, we are working our level best to meet this requirement. And once I tried to deal post-consumer waste in Bangladesh, but there is the embargo of our government from our government level that we cannot import the waste material from outside, so it's not possible presently. But I think government should understand the importance of recycling industry. It can be asset if we can build a lot of recycling facility and import the raw materials from outside as well, not exporting the raw materials to outside. I have some solution proposal from our own, and this is better use and reuse, I think, more natural fiber as much as possible, and find a better solution for blended composition, because blended composition is really difficult to handle presently due to there's the reason the price is very lower in blended composition. And regarding the blended composition materials, ultimately goes to incineration mostly. So we should find a better solution how to implement blended composition in a better way, in a better price. And byproduct management from the factory level should be initiated at the beginning, establishment of the factories, how they want to deal the byproduct. And regarding pre-consumer waste should be segregated at source by color and composition. I mean from factory, the waste should be segregated. And it's not so much difficult, and it's already proved that it's possible. And the reverse resources is working for this project, and we're also the stakeholders in this project. We saw that it's possible. And recycling should start at its source country. I already explained that we should emphasize on recycling factories in our own countries, and more potentially reduce non-value added middlemen from the chain to decline the prices. And at the same time, brands should pay enough for sustainable products to support the industry. Otherwise, we are not able to make a 100% compliance facilities, so that compliance is also a sustainability. So we also need to get better payment from brands. And at the end, I would say that prepare and support sorting and logistic partners like Recycle Raw or any other to play in a global platform, so that we can work like a one-stop solution to get materials from factories directly and and make it preparation for better quality and scale up, and then send to the recyclers directly. There will be no middleman inside. And further, if you have any queries, don't feel hesitate to communicate. And that's all from my part. And I would suggest that Rakesh, Mr. Rakesh, please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much, Razak, for sharing your experience, for sharing some of those challenges, but also sharing some recommendations. It's very useful. So have you looked at what's happening in terms of post-industrial textile material and how it's being handled? And of course, the topic of blended fibers and the challenge. Petra, your team decided to take up that challenge. Yeah, you went for garment, post-consumer garments, and looked at the recycling. So if you could please share your experience, also some background as to why and what happened, what were the emotions like when you all decided to go with this initiative, how many years it took for convincing your partners, and now what has happened, and what do you plan for the next steps? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rakesh, and to Freundlein also for the opportunity. It's a great pleasure. So yeah, my name is Petra. I'm the program manager of Accelerating Circularity. I'm based out of Austria in Europe, and I have been in textile and apparel supply chain for quite some time as well. So I was living and working in Asia. I was long in Bangladesh, Hong Kong, and China, working in product development, sourcing, buying. And I have not seen the participants list, but I might have crossed paths with some of you over all these years. So who is Accelerating Circularity? We are a US-based non-profit organization founded by Carla Magruder only 2 years ago. So we're very young. She herself has been in the industry for 40 plus years. And that's basically her motivation. She has seen that industry for a very long time. She knows it very well. She has seen the impact, she has seen the impact environmentally and socially. Looking at circularity, there is existing infrastructure here that needs to be connected for sure. Sorry. So I made the mistake of having something open. We hear about the brands that pledge to use 100% sustainable materials by 2025, and that pretty much sums up her motivation. To found Accelerating Circularity, to connect all the different stakeholders, to create the common language, to facilitate among them, and in brief, to accelerate circularity. So circularity means different strategies. Nowadays, we talk about re-commerce, repair, resale. But here at Accelerating Circularity, we focus on recycling, textile to textile recycling. Since to date, our regions are the US and Europe. We focus on post-consumer materials. There is plenty. Rakesh, you mentioned before to find maybe another word for waste. We have actually started to call it spent textiles because we think after a period of use phase, all the value is spent, and that's why we coined the term spent textiles. So meaning once these materials are collected and sorted and they are no longer wearable, they cannot be sold to any other market for any other use anymore. They often go into landfills or they are incinerated, as Razak was already telling us. Here in Europe, of course, it very often goes into waste for energy, which yes, it does create energy on a cold morning like today. But at the end of the day, all the value, the resource, the raw material is lost forever. So since we focus on post-consumer, we have to include and we want to include a number of different stakeholders. So we bring in collectors and sorters. These are charities. These are for-profit collectors and sorters that have been doing this for a very long time. But clearly, they collect and sort according to the waste hierarchy. So whatever fraction that we feel goes into a high quality recycling is not the high quality recycled material that is required by the recyclers. So we work with a number of different recyclers. We have mechanical, we have chemical, we have equipment suppliers on board as well. So it's a whole range of different technologies, different feedstock requirements, different outputs, different maturity levels. Then, of course, we need also the traditional supply chain of yarn spinners, fabric mills. They are the absolute experts in understanding the fiber, understanding the flakes that come out. And last but not least, brand and retail. We know their pledges. We know that the demand needs to boost. I think Rasak was also very clear about that. So for one, it's about designing for recycling. That is definitely important to turn off the tap. But more importantly is that brand and retailers understand the output materials that come out of the recycling processes, understand the performance, the limitations, not only the price difference as well, but really understand the outputs and bring it back into their collections. So that is very important for us as well. So as I mentioned, to date, we are only at 2 regions. We have a very small team in the US. We have one in Europe that it's basically me. So we only started 2 years ago. So hopefully we can expand into different and other regions very soon. So at the core of our projects, we have a steering committee that always exists of experts along the value chain. So here you see the ones that are joining the US team and also the European one. And they are the ones giving us guidance as well. So, but apart from those companies, we work with 80 plus additional companies in the various working groups and focus groups. So how do we work? So you can see here our way of working. We, of course, have, as an organization, we have a bit of a theoretical phase 1, where we research, map, model, link. How do we and our stakeholders visualize a circular system of textile to textile recycling? We, of course, also have challenges very similar to what Rasak was telling us. We have bottlenecks, especially when it comes to pre-processing, for example. We also want to understand the opportunities, and especially in Europe, and Rakesh was mentioning already, the EU textile strategy is going to come out very soon. And it's definitely going to impact the industry in terms of eco-design, recycled content, waste prevention and management. So we take up all these things and create the topics and contents around all these points. But the heart and the focus of our project, given also our background in the supply chain, we're very hands-on, is definitely the trial phase. So whatever we were visualizing and discussing, we want to put into practice and really pressure test the system. So we are here in Europe about to start our trial phase, meaning that we use the existing infrastructure of the collectors, sorters. We hopefully create some new pre-processing infrastructure. We use all the different recycling technologies that are out there for different kinds of yarns, materials, products. We, of course, integrate the conventional supply chain of the yarn spinners in the way I mentioned it, and the brands and retailers as well. Again, to not only design for recycling, but especially bring these output materials back into their portfolio and start a beginning of life with these materials. So we always talk about commercial scale here. So we are moving beyond the proof of concept. So we are moving towards mainstream. That's definitely our goal. So for us, it means, of course, a multitude of different stakeholders that are included. And in Europe to date, we have around 30 companies signed up for the trials. We're going to kick off by mid-April, so there is still some time for campaigning. We're going to have eventually different yarns, materials for a number of different products. But for us, it's also important to be able to meet the MOQs determined by the different segments. So that for us is at commercial scale, at least in round number 1, and hopefully in round number 2, we can go a little bit further. So this is going to start off in April here in Europe. In the US, they are a bit ahead already, so they have been working on the pilots already. So we're gonna, as much as possible, have a regular product development phase and then bulk phase. So the entire timeline is at least 1.5 years. So along the way, we're gonna collect data to evaluate and assess, and also hopefully being able to create feedback loops that definitely help also the wider industry. So the physical output we are going to do, you can see here in these small icons. So it's rather basic, nothing crazy. It's going to be cut and sew circular knits. We're going to have twills and canvas. We're going to have denims, hopefully, and some home textiles. So yeah, this ends already my presentation. As I was saying, we are very young, only 2 years old. So right now in the US and Europe, but of course we'd like to expand into other regions very soon. We are definitely also looking into opportunities, how to have output materials from these regions flow back into the wider, more global supply chain. So that will be very interesting for sure as well. And lastly, we are also about to start with a waste flow study to understand, and I think that Razak was saying was very interesting for us as well, because we would like to understand where materials should be exported to based on the importing country's capabilities, needs, and then clearly also regulations to really be able to process these materials. So I hope this helped understanding what accelerating circularity is about. Stay tuned. We have a website. You can reach out to me anytime. And thank you so much again.
Excellent, Petra. Thank you for opening the window into the work of your team members. And as my daughter says, every young person has clearer and better vision. So all the best with the next steps, and we will all be anxiously waiting to celebrate and your learnings, but also your challenges and your experience.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yes. So now, having looked at post-industrial, having looked at what's happening on post-consumer level, let's take an example of an ambitious, young, up-and-coming country, Cambodia, and its textile sector, and how it's addressing, it's refining its own processes to align with not just its national determined contribution, but also giving a practical example of addressing the topic of textile waste. For that, we will have Mr. Massimiliano Tropiano. So the people that Massimiliano likes are allowed to call him Massi. So Massi, if you can please take the next 10, 12 minutes and take us through your journey, GIZ's journey, looking at the topic of textile waste material or spent textile or spent textiles during production, what you have experienced, what you have observed, and what you plan to do ahead. Masi, we can see your slides, but we are just not able to hear you yet. Is it just me, Ryan, or?
Yes, I don't think I can hear you just now.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I can hear you now.
just switch off. 1 second. Yeah. So welcome everybody, and thank you for the very interesting presentation just before me, my fellow panelists. I would like to spend a couple of words first about the project where I am involved with, and yeah, and then we will go in. So the project is called Fabric. Fabric is a regional project of GIZ, and it has into it 6 countries. It aims at getting together private sector, companies, private companies, business associations, ministries, and of course, trade unions and civil society. We have, would say, a vast range of tools and actions and initiatives where we are working with, from the social side, from the environmental side, as well as from the circularity side. And very recently, we decided actually to open, a couple of years ago, the topic of the circularity and to really dive in. I remember in your presentation, there was there is an inverted pyramid of the preferences that goes toward the circularity, and actually at the top there is basically the zero waste, then there is reduce the waste, and after that there is recycling. Unfortunately, in the garment sector, as per the technology that is used today in the world, not only in Cambodia and Southeast Asia, there is no much to do unless, yes, the buyers are working on reducing the waste and the designer side, but let's face it, most of the time, there is no concern too much on that side. And therefore, the low-hanging fruit was really the recycling. So there you go. We decided to go into the recycling, and particularly in the post-industrial waste. The post-consumer is certainly not a big trouble of the Southeast Asia or the sourcing countries. So what we did is to investigate a bit more on waste, and pretty quickly we realized that we needed to do a small study on where is this waste going and how is this waste treated, and what are the paths that this waste follows. I can hear Petra talking about international waste flow, which is, I would say, an extension of what we didn't do that part. We did the flow of the waste inside one country first, in Cambodia, and we found something interesting. Basically, out of the industrial waste in Cambodia, it's a small country, industrial, how to say, frame is pretty much related to the garment sector. Therefore, the industrial waste in Cambodia is 60% textile. Now, this is a number that, in my opinion, is really staggering. It means that almost two-thirds of the industrial waste of Cambodia is made of textile and textile residual. But if we count also leather scrap or plastic material, which are actually similar, they could come also from some sort of garment process, then we have a much higher process. Therefore, we started to understand how much was collected and how in the country and how much was generated. And we didn't have much of a data about the generation of it, the generation of the waste. So we were pretty lucky. Cambodia, being a small country, has extremely few fabric mills. So we did a very simple calculation. We took all the import of Cambodia in terms of tons. We took an estimate of 10 to 15% of that tons as a wastage. We know the wastage can vary from 3% up to 20%, depending on the style, but we took an average conservative of 10 to 15%. And therefore, we had let's say the fabric waste generated in the country. We joined this number with the number of tons that were collected by number of tons of industrial waste that were collected. And we did the 60% of it. And basically, the green is collected by Sarom, which is the industrial waste operator that collects all of it in the entire country. The red is the estimate of the industrial textile waste generated. And we found out basically that in at least in 2019, there was a huge gap of more than 80,000 tons of waste that was somehow disappearing. And we asked ourselves, is it burned? Probably. Part of it. Is it exported? Probably. Part of it. Is it recycled? Probably. Very less. Does it go in the landfill? Probably. Part of it, or is just dumped outside. I mean, this is the landfill means illegal landfill, because a legal landfill is the green part, right? And we started digging into it, and we found out that there are also other reasons why the factory are not always so clear about waste. Essentially, these are all textiles that are imported duty-free and therefore are not supposed to be sold in the country. Therefore, the moment you monetize your waste by selling it or exporting it, that's an illegal action and it would attract taxation. Therefore, the factories and all the managers and the entire economy is actually managed in an informal way. This is also partially the reason why there is this informal sector in Bangladesh or in Pakistan, but might not be the reason. But in Cambodia, actually, taxation plays a big part, because there are no mills and all the fabric is imported duty-free. China had a ban on import of waste 2 years ago. As you can see, 2017 and 2018, the generated and the collected were very, very close to each other. It means that they were basically whatever was extra was probably exported. The moment China closed the border to the textile waste, those 80,000 tons of difference shows up. And actually, yeah, this is probably one of the reasons why the country actually is suffering of many illegal landfills. So continuing with it, we took not only the initiative, we of course, we had more appetite for some more data, and we decided to embark on a study for the entire region. And we were well aware that the informal sector was so difficult to break or difficult to study, let's say, in Bangladesh or in Pakistan or also in India. But we actually were not interested in studying too much about the illegal sector, but we really wanted to know the flow. Where does it go? How much does it end up? And Fatima will later on elaborate quite a lot about it. And one thing I already realized, a lot of it goes to, yes, it goes to India, but a lot of it goes to Europe. And with all the due respect to the recyclers in Europe, to be honest, would be a preferable option to recycle those fabrics in situ, in the country, within the country, therefore offering new set of textile within the country which are recycle based. The challenge is that most of the technology used is patent or is company owned and is not shared, and therefore it stays in Europe and does not trickle down to the Southeast Asia. So we decided anyhow to partner with all the actors of the chain as a following action to the waste study in Cambodia. We decided to foster the feasibility study of a new technology. We identified partners from all the supply chain, private sectors and development sector, and potential of identifying partnering with new actors to make the project a success. Essentially, we decided to go to join the dots of all the various tires of the supply chain. We decided to go for a machine that is at the moment being scaled up to industrial scale, to industrial size. It's not yet a huge size, but is an interesting size to be considered industrial. It's a machine that can address the blended material, particularly polyester blends. I would say that polyester cotton is the preferable option, with maximum 1 or 2%, up to 3% of lycra or elastan or similar materials. And therefore, from the scrap of the garment producer, which is not scrap anymore, from this machine, we can extract something of a sort of polyester fluff, to give you an idea, which is clean and polished, that could be hand over to a yarn producer to be respun into a spun polyester. Again, for what concerns the blend of cotton, the cotton actually becomes a cellulosic powder, which can be used at the fiber in Tier 4 by the fiber producer on the ground as a sort of fertilizer. After that, we decided to involve brands, so to say, the buyers that are at the end of the chain, almost at the end of the chain, and they will be the one who will create the demand for such recycled fabrics. Therefore, let's say, connecting the dots of the supply chain. The people involved are this one in what you see in the presentation. Dakota is a big garment company with around 10,000 workers in Cambodia in three sites. They generate well enough material waste of what this machine potentially can handle at the moment. We are talking about the machine can handle approximately 2 tons a day, and they generate probably 3, 4, depending on the season, even 8 tons a day of waste. And Chipmunk Inc. is a company that is interested in investing in this machine, because they are already having a co-processing plant in their cement kiln where they burn the waste and also fabric waste given by the brands. H&M Foundation is at the base of it, because they founded this study for the technology to the HK Rita, and the HK Rita is the technological partner, you can say. And VF, I guess everybody knows who is VF in this room, and they don't need an introduction. That's it. Therefore, we decided to have this initiative and to foster a feasibility study to see if this machine could potentially work here. The feasibility study is about to start. The tender has already been won by one of the biggest consultancy company in the world, and you can rest assured that we will share the results as soon as we have it. Of course, some of the results will be confidential in terms of numbers and will be open only to the MOU signatories, but majority of it, of course, will be actually of public knowledge. That's it, Rakesh.
Yes.
I would like to thank you, the GIZ, for because I come from private sector, and when we came up with this idea, the GIZ management decided to believe in it and go for it. So therefore, kudos to them, to us.
Thank you, Masi, and all the best with the next steps of the feasibility study. Let's look a little further ahead into what happens with this study. What started off in Cambodia, how is it being reflected into the other countries in Asia? For that, we'll have Ms. Fatima Jahan. She's the project leader of this textile waste mapping study. And while Fatima, we have several colleagues in different countries focused on this, and many days of efforts already gone in and many more that comes ahead. If you can please take us through a short journey, through a quick short journey in about 8 to 10 minutes, yeah? So Fatima, over to you.
Thank you so much. As Masi already shared, the big picture of the big project is going on the fabric. We are doing the feasibility study in the countries Bangladesh, Vietnam, Pakistan, Cambodia, and China. And it's a regional project, and among the different topics, we are covering the waste management part. And we know that different type of wastages are generating in textile industry. But for this study, our focus will be on the cutting wastages generating from the cutting, mainly fabric wastages, and additionally, the end rolls, which is generated from the factory. Very shortly, the brief of the project. The background is to identify the recycling opportunities of textile waste, and our focus already shared to the end rolls and the cutting fabric waste generated from the cutting. And the objective is to analyze the fabric waste system, as well as we know that the countrywide regulation is very important to implement any new initiatives. So it's important to analyze the regulatory frameworks also. And finally, our planning is to outcome is how we can create the wastages or take it to the circular economy and create the income source of it. To make the project successful, we have some strategic plan. And first of all, our goal is to map the waste stream. And there was different data collection we have to depend. And for that, different stakeholders are involved on that, including the factories, related waste handlers and brands. And we're collecting the data both from the face-to-face interview, and we have some online data collection tool also. Then we will go through a rigorous data analysis, and basing on the analysis, so that we could come to the conclusion, maybe what is happening in the industry right now, where the wastages are go right now. Someone is comfortable to recycle the wastages. Maybe someone is comfortable to just sell it to the third parties. And why these are happening, why different factories or different people are choosing the different opportunities, and what are the challenges they are facing. So these all will be our plan for the studies. We will have first of all, to collect the data, we have created some interview questions and contacting with the stakeholders, basing on the information collecting from the countrywide. We will collect from different countries, and finally we will map it or analyze it regionally, how we could incorporate it regionally. And during this stakeholder interview, we are collecting, first of all, the core waste issues, and we are considering the cause and effect, how the stakeholders are involved with this study, who are affected with it, and why they are choosing these different options. That means waste burning or waste landfilling, and what are the effect on that, and so that we can mitigate these options and could collect it to the circular economy. This is one example of stakeholder mapping, how we are doing. We are considering different brands and factories, associations that involved to this study purpose. So what we are expecting for this study, maybe the funding is doing from GIZ, and of course technical support is given from GIZ, but ultimately the stakeholders who are involved in this project are very important. And to make this project successful, your information and your inputs are very important. And for that, we are going to recognize from two sides that who are giving their time, effort, and knowledge about the industry to us. We will provide a recognition letter from to Greenland. And of course, after completing the project, GIZ will decide how they could include the stakeholders to the further projects or further initiative. And finally, from our side, our planning is to maybe making all the stakeholders together and giving the recognition letter in front of each other so that we could have better communication to each other. As we are responsible in different countrywide responsibilities are defined and working to identify the actual scenario. These are the team we are working in different countries. If you have any queries or any comments, you can share with us and contact with us from the country level to the contact persons. This finally, what we need from your side, anyone, if you want to join willingly to this project, to share your view, to share your thoughts, then we will very happy. And it will, of course, help us or GIZ to come to the to get the actual scenario of what is happening currently to the industry. So you are open. You can contact with us who are willing to participate in the study part. Thank you. And if any question.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think we can repeat what you already said earlier, Masi. You said kudos to GIZ and kudos to you. So of course, kudos to GIZ for initiating such a research study. And yeah, we are all excited to see what we learn, what we identify, what we unravel. So that for the call to action, in case you have facilities, in case you yourself would want to give some feedback, then you have the contact details to reach us. And then finally, if you want to be part of the review board for the data, then we will also pass it on to GIZ team, and they would be looking at who can have a first look in order to provide critique or comments or suggestions on the data, on the report, on the findings. Now, having heard all the interventions so far, starting from a waste sorter level in Bangladesh from Razak and Recycle Raw, then looking at what's happening on garment to garment and post-consumer or spent textiles via Accelerating Circularity and Petra, looking at what's happening in Cambodia and the regional waste mapping project. There's a question for you, for all of you on the call. What do you feel should be the first hurdle? What should be the first topic that should be overcome in order to go ahead with regards to textile scrap especially? Do you feel that we need government policy and enforcement to overcome the sinister criminal elements or the mafia? Do you feel that we need this greater direct connection between the supplier of textile scrap and the recycler or the sorter? Do you feel that we need better material traceability so that it'd be easier for carrying on quality checks and compliance of this recycled material, or to increase the visibility for the manufacturers who are the generators of this textile scrap, that they realize and they can see better what is the price and value of this material in the open market, so that they themselves implement resource efficiency measures, so that they themselves, as the creator or generator of this scrap, be able to identify who they can work with to get the best price. And if you feel that something else should take place, then please take advantage of the chat box and please type in your message as to what you feel is the first hurdle that should be overcome in order that the industry, that the generator of that textile scrap be able to get the best possible value and there be greater efficiency so that cost be addressed. So for 45% of the participants who have responded already, thank you very much. Let's keep it open, Ryan, for 3 more seconds. Okay. Here we see the results, and what's clear based on your feedback, is there has to be some kind of policy and better enforcement that those sinister elements are not able to adversely impact. Now, before we end, I wanted to ask one question. So thank you everybody for responding to questions. Yes, a recording of the webinar and also the link to the presentation will be shared. And before we end, I wanted to ask, what is the next thing that you will do after this webinar? Let's start with you, Petra, on the topic of spent textiles management, waste management. What is it that you're going to do next today, in the next hour?
So for us, it's definitely the trial phase that is coming up. So today is actually a crucial day because we are sending out the official agreements to all the stakeholders that have committed. But as I said in my presentation, the campaigning is still ongoing for the next few weeks, and then we kick off by mid-April.
Okay, thank you very much. And how about yourself, Razak? What will you be focusing on in the next hour or couple of hours today?
Yeah, actually, recycling is a kind of passion for me, and we always look for, try to study that how recycling is moving forward and how to add some value, something like that. And after this session, I'm much more motivated that different part of the world, everybody is working for a noble job, I would say. So maybe I will study a little bit more about GIZ now, and let's see how we can cooperate each other.
Right. And how about yourself, Masi? What is your plan for the next couple of hours?
I wouldn't talk about the next couple of hours. I would like to talk for the next couple of years. Look and foster and push for new kind of recycling and recyclers initiative in Asia. It's really something that is not right if the waste is shipped into Europe and with all the greenhouse gas emission connected to it, whereas actually it could be with similar technology, it could be used and recycled here in this part of the world.
Okay, great, thanks. And Fatima, while we hear about what some of our panelists are going to do today, we also hear about Masi's long term. I'm curious from you, Fatima. Every day is different, of course, and what's your plan for the remaining part of today on the topic of textile waste?
Yes, of course. As part of this project, I would like to say I have to identify what are the challenges currently we are having and how the mapping is going on, and to mitigate the challenges and create a better recycling opportunity countrywide.
All right, great.
And there is one question to me that if anyone can join individually for this project or through this company. First of all, on the topic which you were interested to talk with us, we are very open to discuss individual person also.
Okay, great, thank you. On my side, I will be going into the European Union Circular Economy Stakeholder Forum, where we will be having a dialogue on the topic of textile waste. So if any of you have the time and interest, then March 1st and March 2nd, the European Union Circular Economy Stakeholder Forum, please join us there. I want to thank all of you, our panelists, for taking the time, for sharing your experience, the work of your team, but also sharing your wisdom. And thank you, of course, to all the participants for actively being part of it, for responding to polls, for taking time. And Ryan, thank you very much for making sure everything works out perfectly for us. Thanks a lot then. Take care. Bye-bye.